3 summits on the achievement gap is a project of this initiative, each with a separate focus: African American, Native American, Hispanic American student needs. We can't continue to do things the way we always have. To accomplish real change, we need to think outside the box and get the whole community involved. The main purpose of the summit was to ask the statewide community for new ideas and have their support to take action.
High expectations for all students.
So who would be responsible of doing this? Would it be the students themselves, the community as adults?
We're targeting the students that are in need.
Every person invited was identified by members of their own communities as creative, bold, collaborative, and effective. 1/4 of participants at each summit were students. They must be empowered to take part in discussions about their own future.
The process began with identifying the stakeholders. In terms of voices, we wanted to hear from parents, we wanted to hear from students.
I'm looking for 3 things. 1, what can we implement in the classroom immediately, like today, like tomorrow? What can be implemented immediately in the community? What parental involvement can we do to keep these kids in school, to motivate? Number 3, what can be considered for legislative action?
We are in a crisis and there has to be a sense of urgency. The impact to New Mexico to have such large numbers of students not performing well and not graduating from high school is not only a moral imperative, it affects us economically, our quality of life for New Mexicans.
Can you put the undiscussables on the table? Can you put the issues that we all know, we're talking about them in our communities? A lot of our kids are dropping out because they've got to go make money for the family. Can we talk about that publicly as a community?
It's really important to seek out opportunity. Like, I know when I was in high school, I didn't know what to do. And so, like, I dropped out when I was in high school, and then I ended up going back to school. And it's really just, I learned eventually that it's so important that, like, you have to look for it because the resources are there.
I want you to be bold. I want you to make some recommendations. I want you to speak out on what we need to do to revolutionize education in New Mexico.
I still think we need to talk about employment opportunities, cultural identity, and the academic achievement.
An anti-bias, anti-racist, community-based.
Partnerships, agreements, whatever you want to call it, has to be developed. And I guess the bottom line is accountability, meaning parents, staff, teachers, educators, students.
Yeah, I think if they had more education on the significance and what they can do if not, they have the high school diploma.
Competition makes you better. And at schools, maybe you should form like study groups to where you get together and you compete against each other as far as grades.
So one of my out-of-the-box recommendations is to declare a zero-tolerance policy on dropouts, expulsions, and school failure.
So take ownership of it and do what you want to do.
I come home, I don't have access to internet, I don't have a laptop, I don't have a computer. So when you talking about issues of poverty, there's more than just that I'm poor. It's what does poor say to me? And then how is that affected? How are the teachers, how is the programming in the local school driven towards helping me succeed and breaking whatever limitations that poverty might bring on me.
When we talk about qualified teachers, we need to make sure that we're clear. It's not just academically, but there is training in existence that needs to be implemented at every level, K through 12, and it's a cultural proficiency. It's what you call professional development, and it needs to be added to the curriculum for educators, all educators.
The overarching concept here is an alliance of Black educators.
Good morning, my name is Cheryl. I'm from San Felipe Pueblo, and a critical obstacle I would believe would be teachers' cultural sensitivity to teaching. They don't fully understand where we're coming from, why we do certain things, and why we miss school.
So we need to find their voice. We need to find the voice of those students that really, really need that support. Yeah.
2 or more teachers in the class. 2 or more teachers in the classroom.
Smaller learning communities.
Smaller learning communities.
But create like different learning patterns. I think the teachers should be able to meet with like the students like at the beginning of the year or something and like talk over how they think they should go about doing things because not everyone learns the same.
Because a lot of times they don't get certain subjects that the teacher is talking about, so the teacher takes time after school to go and tutor a small class of kids that just show up.
The tribe should be able to be allowed to get report cards from tribal member students and look at those report cards and see how their students are doing because that's their students, that's their future.
Really what I would say to any of my friends is what you're doing today, it is going to affect the rest of your future. High school and school might not really seem like a big deal right now, but the credits that you earn and how you behave in your classes and the grades that you make in your classes, they count.
This is a golden opportunity. Having the student participation and the adult, when they came together, they were able to get something that we very seldom hear from, and that is the student, the one that's going to be affected by most of these situations and not by the adults.
The technology, if the teacher, for example, puts the lecture on the web, like on YouTube or some website, you can get that from home and you don't miss that homework. And just bring the technology into the classroom because the technology is already used worldwide.
The commonality is that students are talking about maybe we need to change and make some rules that affect student outcome based on what they feel are the most important issues. Don't dumb down the classes. Don't just try to make it easy for me to graduate because I really want something when I leave here.
Being pushed, it does suck. Like when your parents when your parents push you, it does, you know. But in the long run, it does help. Just like when you get in trouble.
We need to ensure that our children come to school ready to learn. So how can we create access and early learning opportunities for all of our children? How do we accommodate language differences? And how do we address that? How do we address parental involvement in meaningful ways? How do we communicate to these children an expectation that it's not if you graduate from high school, but when you graduate from high school?
Being a native to me is respecting my culture and being a good role model for my culture.
Something that you have to keep in mind about your languages is that they have to, if they are going to continue to be a dynamic in your life, if they're going to be something that is useful, that serves you, your people, they're going to have to come into the 21st century.
There are unique challenges for each ethnicity and for each focus of the achievement gap, but I think that there are more similarities than differences, and I think we always have to keep that in mind.
Some of the biggest education challenges facing Native American youth in New Mexico, I believe, is self-esteem and motivation. Not a lot of kids have that motivation from parents or people within their community to do better and fulfill their full potential.
From the very first breath of a child's life, teaching those traditions, those values is the role of parents, us as parents. We are the first and will always be the most important educators to our children. And like we say in Tewa, kaheng he wanambite te papa indimu ine hawe. Since the beginning of time, our elders, our ancestors have brought forth our language, our culture, our songs, our traditions, our stories on their backs. And now it's in the palm of our hands. It's our responsibility now to take those things forward so that they're not forgotten.
Redefining what success and achievement means for our students. So the assessment piece is a humongous piece, but there's things that we can do now and there's things that we have to look at into the future.
Looking at what are the success indicators for our communities and our students. Do we want them to achieve well on this NMSBA test, and which I know we all do, but but we also want them to learn their language. We want them to be able to go home to their communities and know their culture and their language.
General cultural competence, and however we define that among teachers,
or instructing curriculum can fit into that as well.
So students see themselves reflected in curriculum and have a relationships with teachers.
And so what we need to do is figure out how do we negotiate those relationships organizationally, programmatically, and as a community base, so that our voices are at the table and that we get heard.
We want to open up the schools as a community center, if you will, rather than just school-based activities that the school closes down at 3:30 and everybody goes home. And we don't have a sense of attachment to our school districts that way.
At the end of the day, each summit was a call to action. Truly, education is everybody's business.
Graduate New Mexico focuses on all aspects I believe are needed for student success. Accountability, quality teachers, early learning, closing the achievement gap, parent and community involvement, 21st century classrooms, college and career readiness.
We should feel that same sense of urgency for all the children of New Mexico because they are our children, they are our future, and we need to think about these are real lives.
I have dreams and want to prosper to be someone out there, Natalie Salvador, a Native American from Isleta, to be recognized and known.
Yeah. September 11, 2009. 9/11, this is the disaster recording. But the disaster that we're talking about this time is the educational system. Teachers, parents, students, everybody involved. Different classrooms. Not a teacher, but I teach. Have taught and still do, but now the classrooms are different. Force back the patient from doctorate, from masters to novice, from professor to scholar, from teacher to college, the high school problem child. Now the students had the knowledge, and we're catching up. I've sat in labs with 22 separate experiments, conducting experiments, and a few antisocial reactions going wrong had me wondering what their parents meant or didn't mean when they had them. But the feeling is mutual. The real classroom has a ceiling of clouds, and sometimes it has walls of injustice and windows of misperception, but it's got a ground, and you got 2 feet, so you can always walk, wheel, or fly your way to another lesson, and that's what they taught me. That no matter how bad my pride wanted that feel-good, self-serving Michelle Pfeiffer, dangerous minds kind of conviction, that noble sacrifice of a profession, I was no teacher. I was just a lesson. Can't even call myself a good learner, but I learned, have learned, and still do. But now, the classrooms are different.